Captain Lisa Warren stared at the scanner readings on her ship's main screen. Something was wrong with what they were seeing. The asteroid ahead of them was hollow, and that made no sense at all. "Run the scan again, Ben," she told her navigation. "Officer." The young man's fingers danced across his controls, but the results came back the same. "Captain, I'm getting the same readings. There's definitely something inside that rock. It looks like some kind of building or facility." Lisa walked closer to the main screen. Her ship, the UES Horizon, had been mapping this system for 3 weeks now. They had found nothing interesting until today. The Kepler 442 system was supposed to be empty except for a few dead planets and some floating rocks. "Any idea how old it is?" She asked. Dr. Kethvar, the ship's science officer, looked up from his station. The tall alien had blue skin and large, black eyes that made him look wise and careful. His people, the Zephyrians, were known for being very smart and very cautious about everything. "The asteroid shows signs of being worked on about 300 years ago, Captain, but that's impossible. Humans didn't have the technology to travel this far back then." Lisa felt a chill run down her back. 300 years ago, humans had barely made it to their own moon. There was no way they could have built anything out here. Could it be alien? She asked. Kethvar shook his head slowly. "The metal composition matches human building materials from that time period. Everything about it says human-made, but the timeline doesn't work." Lieutenant Dan Cooper, her communications officer, turned in his chair. "Captain, I'm picking up a very weak power signal from inside the asteroid. Something is still running." "In there." Lisa made her decision quickly. "Take us in closer." Full scanning sweep. "I want to know everything about that thing before we even think about going aboard." The next 2 hours were spent running every test they could think of. The facility was definitely human-made, but it was older than any human space travel on record. Worse, it was clearly designed as some kind of military installation. The scans showed heavy armor plating and what looked like weapon systems, though they appeared to be offline. "Captain," Kethvar said quietly, "I'm detecting a single life form inside the facility. Human. It appears to be in some kind of suspended animation." Lisa stared at him. "That's impossible. No human cryogenic technology from 300 years ago could keep someone alive that long." "I know, Captain. But the readings are clear. There's a human being in there, and they're alive." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Lisa looked around at her crew. Dan Cooper was young and eager, always ready for adventure. Ben Martinez at navigation was steady and reliable. Dr. Sarah Kim, her medical officer, was already checking her equipment, probably planning how to help whoever was inside that facility. "Recommendations?" Lisa asked. Kethvar was the first to speak. "We should report this to Federation Command immediately. A human facility predating known space travel is a significant discovery." Dr. Kim disagreed. "If there's someone alive in there, they need medical attention. We can't just leave them while we wait for orders." Lisa thought about it for a moment. The Galactic Federation had rules about first contact situations, but this wasn't exactly first contact. This was supposedly a human facility with a human. Inside it, "We're going aboard," she decided. "Full away team. Dr. Kim, bring everything you might need for emergency medical care. Kethvar, I want you monitoring from here. If anything goes wrong, you get us out." "Captain," Kethvar said carefully, "my people have a saying about sleeping things that are meant to stay sleeping. Perhaps this person was put into suspended animation for a reason." Lisa looked at the alien scientist. His large black eyes held real concern, not just caution. The Zephyrians had been exploring space for thousands of years. If they had a saying about something like this, it was probably worth listening to. "Noted," she said. "But we're still going aboard. If someone is alive in there, We have a duty to help them. 2 hours later, Lisa found herself floating through the docking bay of the mysterious facility. The artificial gravity was still working, which was amazing after 300 years. The air was breathable, though stale. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow that made the place feel dangerous. Dr. Kim ran her scanner over everything. As they moved deeper into the facility, the air is clean but old. This place has been sealed tight for a very long time. They found the cryogenic chamber in the center of the facility. It was much more advanced than anything Lisa had ever seen, even with modern technology. The chamber was a smooth white pod that hummed quietly with power. "Ben, can you access the computer system?" Lisa asked. Cooper plugged his portable unit into a port near the chamber. "I'm in, Captain. This is weird. The computer says the occupant is Lieutenant Colonel Jake Morrison, but there's no other information. No service record, no date of birth, nothing." Dr. Kim was running medical scans on the chamber. "Whoever is in there is alive and healthy. The revival process should be safe, but Captain, this technology is way beyond what humans had 300 years ago." Lisa stared at the chamber. Every instinct told her this was dangerous, but she couldn't leave someone trapped in suspended animation. "Begin the revival process," she ordered. The chamber began to hum louder. Steam hissed from vents around the edges. Slowly, the top half of the pod began to slide open. Inside, a man began to stir. He was tall and muscular, with short brown hair, and scars on his arms and face that spoke of many battles. His eyes opened suddenly, and Lisa gasped. They were the coldest, most alert eyes she had ever seen. This man went from unconscious to fully awake in an instant. "Status report," he said, in a clear, strong voice as he sat up. His eyes swept the room, taking in everything and everyone in seconds. "Sir, I'm Captain Lisa Warren of the United Earthship Horizon. You've been in suspended animation for approximately 300 years. The man's expression didn't change. He climbed out of the chamber with smooth, controlled movements that reminded Lisa of a predator. "What year is it?" 2387, sir." "The war?" he asked. "What war, sir?" For the first time, the man's expression showed emotion. Confusion, then something that might have been relief. "The silent war. Against the enemy. Did we win?" Lisa exchanged glances with her team. "Sir, I don't know what war you're referring to. Earth has been at peace for over 2 centuries. We're part of the Galactic Federation now." The man was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Quieter, but somehow more dangerous. "I'm Lieutenant Colonel Jake Morrison, Project Lazarus, Earth Defense Command. I need to speak with your commanding officer immediately." Dr. Kim stepped forward with her medical scanner. "Sir, I need to run some basic medical checks to make sure you're healthy after such a long time in suspended animation." Morrison looked at her, and Lisa saw Kim take a step back without thinking about it. There was something about this man that made people want to move away from him. "Run your tests, doctor." But quickly, "If I've been asleep for 300 years, then something went very wrong with the plan." As Dr. Kim ran her scans, Morrison answered their questions. He claimed to be from the year 2089, during something he called the Silent War. He said he had volunteered for an experimental program that enhanced human soldiers to fight an enemy that threatened Earth's survival. None of it made sense. There were no records of any such war or any enhancement programs. But Morrison's medical scans showed things that shouldn't exist. His reflexes were impossibly fast. His muscle density was beyond human normal. His brain activity showed patterns that Dr. Kim had never seen before. "Captain," Morrison said as they prepared to return to the ship, "I need you to understand something. I wasn't put into suspended animation to wait out a war. I was put there as a last resort. to be awakened only if humanity faced complete extinction. He paused and looked directly at her with those cold, alert eyes. If I'm awake now, it means something went wrong. Very wrong. The journey back to Federation space took 6 days. During that time, Jake Morrison learned about the galaxy he had awakened to find. He spent hours in the ship's database, reading about humanity's peaceful integration into the Galactic Federation, about the colonies that now existed on dozens of worlds, and about the wars that had never happened. Captain Lisa Warren watched him carefully. Morrison moved through the ship like he owned it, checking security systems and noting weak points that her own crew had never considered. When he walked into a room, conversations stopped. People moved out of his way without thinking about it. He makes me nervous, Dr. Sarah Kim told Lisa privately. His medical readings are unlike anything I've ever seen. His reaction time is 3 times faster than normal human speed. His bone density suggests he could punch through metal, and his brain scans show activity in regions that are normally dormant in humans. Lisa nodded. She had noticed other things. 2. Morrison never seemed to sleep, though he did rest with his eyes closed for a few hours each night. He ate very little, but seemed perfectly healthy. Most disturbing, he had a way of looking at people that made them feel like he was calculating how quickly he could kill them. What do you think about his story? Lisa asked. Dr. Kim shook her head. There's no record of any silent war, no record of Project Lazarus, no record of him in any military database. But his equipment is real, his scars are old, and his technology is beyond what we thought possible 300 years ago. On the 3rd day of their journey, Morrison asked to speak with Lisa privately in her ready room. Captain, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me, he said, sitting across from her desk. How do humans fight now? Lisa was confused by the question. What do you mean? In combat? How do modern humans handle warfare? Well, we haven't had a major war in over a century. Federation peacekeepers handle most conflicts through negotiation and minimal force. When combat is necessary, we use advanced weapons and defensive technology. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Show me your combat training programs. Lisa led him to the ship's small training room. She demonstrated the basic hand-to-hand combat that all Federation officers learned. It was efficient and practical, designed to subdue opponents with minimal harm. Morrison watched without expression. When she finished, he asked, "May I?" Lisa stepped back and nodded. What happened next would stay with her for the rest of her life. Morrison moved like water and struck like lightning. He flowed through combat positions that seemed impossible, his body bending and turning in ways that looked almost inhuman. When he finished his demonstration, the training dummy was destroyed and the floor was cracked where his feet had struck it. Captain, he said calmly, not even breathing hard, modern. Humans fight like children playing games. You've forgotten what war really means. That evening, Morrison asked to speak with Dr. Kethfor. The Zephyrian scientist was reluctant, but Lisa arranged the meeting. Dr. Kethfor, Morrison said, how long have humans been part of the Federation? About 230 years. Kethfor replied carefully. And in that time, how many wars have humans fought? Very few. Humans have been remarkably peaceful members of the Federation. Morrison nodded slowly. What do other species think of human military capabilities? Kethfor hesitated. Humans are considered competent, but not exceptional. Your people are valued for your adaptability and determination, but you're not feared as warriors. Feared, Morrison repeated. Tell me, Doctor, were humans ever feared? Not in my lifetime, Kethfor said, though there are old stories from before the Federation was formed. Tales of human mercenaries and soldiers who are ... different. But those are just legends. Morrison smiled, and Kethfor took a step backward. There was something predatory in that smile. Not legends, Doctor, memories. On the 5th day, they received a message from Luna Station requesting immediate docking for debriefing. Admiral Curtis. Blake himself would be conducting the interview with Morrison. This is highly unusual, Lisa told her communications officer Dan Cooper. Admiral Blake doesn't personally interview recovered personnel. Maybe word got out about what we found, Cooper suggested. Morrison overheard their conversation. Captain, when we dock, I want you to observe everything carefully. Watch how people react to me. Watch how your superiors behave. I suspect my awakening is going to cause more trouble than anyone expects. Luna Station was the primary military facility for Earth's defense forces. When the Horizon docked, they were met by a full honor guard and escorted directly to Admiral Blake's office. Blake was a distinguished man in his 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had commanded Earth's forces for over a decade and was known for his calm judgment and tactical brilliance. Colonel Morrison, Blake said as they entered. His office. I've read Captain Warren's preliminary report. Quite a story. Admiral, Morrison replied, standing at attention. Permission to speak freely? Granted. Sir, I need to know what happened to Project Lazarus. I need to know what happened to the other enhanced soldiers. And I need to know why there's no record of the silent war. Blake was quiet for a long moment. Colonel, I've had my best people researching your claims. We've found nothing. No records, no evidence, no trace of any war during the period you describe. Morrison's expression didn't change. Sir, request permission to demonstrate my capabilities. Demonstrate? How? Combat training, sir, against your best people. Blake looked at Lisa. Captain Warren, what's your assessment of Colonel Morrison's abilities? Lisa chose her words carefully. Admiral, I believe a demonstration would be ... enlightening. An hour later, they were in Luna Station's main training facility. Blake had assembled 12 of his best Marines, all volunteers who had been briefed on the situation. They were Federation elite, trained in combat techniques from a dozen different worlds. Morrison stood in the center of the training mat, wearing simple exercise clothes. The Marines surrounded him, armed with practice weapons and protective gear. Begin. Blake said. What happened next defied everything Lisa thought she knew about human capabilities. Morrison moved like a force of nature. He flowed between the Marines, striking with precision that left each opponent unconscious or immobilized in seconds. He never seemed hurried or stressed. When the last Marine fell, Morrison wasn't even breathing hard. The training facility was completely silent. Blake stared at Morrison with an expression of shock and something that might have been fear. How? Blake asked quietly. Enhanced reflexes, strength, and processing speed, Morrison replied. Genetic modifications and cybernetic. Implants designed for warfare against opponents that normal humans couldn't fight effectively. Dr. Kethfer, who had been watching from the observation deck, came down to the training floor. He ran his scanner over Morrison, then checked the unconscious Marines. Admiral, he said slowly, Colonel Morrison's biological readings during that combat were unlike anything I've seen from any species. His heart rate barely increased. His muscle efficiency was impossibly high. And the Marines, they're all alive and uninjured, but they were struck with force that should have killed them. He held back. Morrison looked directly at Blake. Admiral, I was designed to fight enemies that could destroy entire planets. These men are brave and skilled, but they're fighting like the war has already been won. Blake dismissed everyone except Morrison and Lisa. When they were alone, he sat heavily in a chair. Colonel, assuming your story is true, why were you and your fellow enhanced soldiers hidden away? Why was all record of this war erased? Morrison was quiet for a moment. Because we scared people, sir. When the war was over, when the threat was gone, Nobody wanted to remember what they had asked us to become. We were weapons that were too dangerous to keep around during peacetime. And now? Now I'm awake, which means something has gone wrong. The automated systems that kept me in suspended animation were programmed to revive me only under specific conditions. What conditions? Morrison looked out the window at Earth, hanging blue and beautiful in the darkness of space. The return of the enemy, sir. The sensors detected something that matched the threat parameters from the silent war. Blake felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of enemy? The kind that doesn't leave survivors, Admiral. The kind that makes. Entire civilizations disappear without a trace. At that moment, Cooper's voice came over the communication system, urgent and frightened. Admiral Blake, we're receiving emergency signals from the outer colonies. 3 systems have gone completely silent in the last 2 hours. No response to any communications. Morrison stood up slowly. It's starting again. Blake looked at him. What's starting again? The war we thought we won, Admiral. The enemy has returned, and this time, humanity isn't ready for them. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been Earth's leading military historian for 20 years. She thought she knew everything about human warfare. That changed the moment Admiral Blake called her to Luna Station with orders to investigate Jake Morrison's impossible claims. I need you to find proof, Blake told her in his office. Either prove he's telling the truth, or prove he's lying, but I need to know which one it is. Elena had already spent 3 days going through every database she could access. There was no record of Project Lazarus, no record of the Silent War, and no record of Jake Morrison in any military file. It was as if the man had never existed. But there were strange gaps in the historical records. Empty spaces where data should have been. Classified files that had been sealed so deeply that even she couldn't access them. And most disturbing of all, there were reports from the late 2080s about people suffering from strange memory problems, as if large portions of their past had simply been erased. Admiral, she said, I think someone deliberately removed all traces of this war from our records. The question is why. Blake nodded grimly. Keep looking. And Dr. Morrison says there were other enhanced soldiers. If they exist, we need to find them. Elena returned to Earth that same day. She had an idea about where to look, but it would require going places that officially didn't exist. 3 days later, she stood at the edge of Antarctica, staring at coordinates that Morrison had given her from memory. According to him, there was a hidden facility buried 2 miles under the ice that contained the complete records of Project Lazarus. Are you sure about this? Asked Captain Tony Miller, the pilot of her transport vehicle. These coordinates point to the middle of nowhere. I'm sure, Elena said, though she wasn't sure at all. She was risking her career on the word of a man who claimed to be from a war that never happened. They drilled through the ice for 6 hours before they found it. A metal door marked with symbols that didn't match any known human military designation. Elena's hands shook as she used Morrison's access codes to open the sealed entrance. Inside, the facility was pristine. Emergency power had kept everything preserved for 3 centuries. Elena walked through corridors lined with computer terminals and storage banks, feeling like she was exploring a tomb. The main archive room contained more data than she had ever seen in one place. As she began accessing the files, the truth of Morrison's story unfolded before her eyes. The Silent War had been real. Between 2076 and 2091, Earth had been invaded by something called the Devourers. The files described them as beings that existed, partially outside normal space and time, creatures that fed on life energy itself. They would arrive at a planet, drain every living thing on it, and leave behind empty worlds with no trace of what had happened. The invasion had been kept secret from the general population through advanced mind control technology. Only a small group of enhanced soldiers, scientists, and government officials had been allowed to remember the war. Everyone else had their memories altered to believe that nothing unusual had happened. Elena read through battle reports that made her sick to her stomach. Entire cities had been evacuated, and their populations hidden in underground shelters, while enhanced soldiers fought battles in the streets above. The enhanced humans were the only ones who could even see the Devourers properly. To normal humans, the enemy appeared as shadows and nightmares. Morrison had been one of 50 enhanced soldiers, created through experimental genetic modification and cybernetic implants. The process had changed them at a fundamental level, making them faster, stronger, and capable of perception that normal humans couldn't match. But it had also made them dangerous in ways that the files only hinted at. The war had ended when the enhanced soldiers destroyed the Devourer's main dimensional gateway, but at a terrible cost. 37 of the 50 enhanced soldiers had died in the final battle. The 13 survivors had been considered too dangerous to remain active in peacetime. Elena found the decision records that explained everything. The government officials who had authorized Project Lazarus became afraid of what they had created. The enhanced soldiers were too powerful, too different from normal humans. They made decisions that regular people couldn't understand and fought in ways that seemed more like monsters than heroes. The final decision had been unanimous. All records of the war would be erased from history. The surviving enhanced soldiers would be placed in permanent suspended animation in hidden facilities scattered throughout human space. The technology to wake them would be linked to sensors. That would activate only if the Devourers returned. Elena transmitted her findings to Admiral Blake immediately. Within hours, she received new orders. Find and locate the other suspended animation facilities. If Morrison was awake, the others needed to be found before the enemy arrived in force. Meanwhile, on Luna Station, Morrison was working with Federation military leaders to prepare for a war that nobody understood. The reports from the outer colonies were getting worse. 5 systems had now gone completely silent, with investigation teams finding empty planets and no signs of struggle. It's exactly the same pattern as before, Morrison told the assembled officers. The Devourers are testing our defenses, looking for weak points before they begin their main assault. Admiral Blake looked tired and worried. Colonel, how long do we have? Based on the previous invasion timeline, we have maybe 2 weeks before they begin attacking core Federation worlds. And Admiral, there's something else you need to understand. The Federation military isn't equipped to fight this enemy. Explain. Morrison activated holographic display showing the Devourer's attack patterns. They don't exist entirely in our dimension. Your weapons will pass right through them most of the time. Your sensors can barely detect them. And worse, prolonged exposure to them will drain the life force from your crews. General Patricia Hayes, the Federation's top military strategist, leaned forward. Then how do we fight them? With people like me, Morrison said simply. The enhanced soldiers were designed specifically to combat this threat. We can see them clearly. Our weapons can hurt them, and our life force is protected by our modifications. How many enhanced soldiers are there? Blake asked. 50 were created originally. 13 survived the war. Elena found records of their storage locations. Elena's voice came through the communication system from Earth. Admiral, I've located 12 of the 13 facilities. We can reach most of them within a week if we move fast. Blake made his decision. Do it. Send teams to every location. We need those soldiers awake and ready. Morrison looked around the room at the Federation officers. These were good people, brave and intelligent, but they had no idea what they were about to face. Admiral, there's something else. The enhanced soldiers weren't just weapons. The process that created us changed how we think, how we make decisions. We were designed to make the hard choices that normal humans couldn't make. What kind of choices? Morrison was quiet for a moment. The kind of choices that win wars but cost souls, sir. We were created to be humanity's monsters, so that humanity could remain human. Over the next week, recovery teams reached the hidden facilities scattered throughout human space. They found 12 more enhanced soldiers in perfect suspended animation. As each one was revived, they confirmed Morrison's story and added their own pieces to the puzzle. Sergeant Amy Phillips was a small woman with scars on her hands and a voice that could cut steel. She had been a demolitions expert who could calculate the exact amount of explosive needed to collapse a building without harming civilians in the basement. Lieutenant Rick Hayes was tall and quiet, with eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He had been a sniper who could hit targets that were partially phased out of normal reality. Corporal Lisa Stone could move through enemy territory without being detected, even by creatures that could sense life energy directly. Each enhanced soldier brought unique abilities, but they all shared the same cold efficiency that made regular humans uncomfortable. They moved differently, thought differently, and looked at the world through the lens of permanent warfare. As they gathered on Luna Station, Admiral Blake realized that he was no longer in command of Earth's defense. These 13 enhanced humans operated as a unit that answered to Morrison, and Morrison answered to a mission that transcended normal military authority. "Admiral," Morrison said during their final briefing, "I need you to understand something. When this war begins, we're going to do things that will seem wrong to you. We're going to make decisions that will horrify normal humans. But those decisions will be necessary for survival." Blake looked at the 13 enhanced soldiers standing before him. They looked human, but there was something alien about them, something that made his instincts scream danger. "What are you asking me to do, Colonel?" "Trust." "U.S., sir. And when this is over, be ready to put us back to sleep. Because a world that needs people like us is not a world where people like us should be allowed to stay awake." At that moment, emergency alarms began blaring throughout Luna Station. Communication Officer Cooper's voice came over the speakers, tight with fear. "Admiral Blake to the command center immediately. We're receiving distress calls from 3 core Federation worlds. The enemy has begun their main assault." The attack on New Geneva came without warning. One moment the Federation colony was home to 8 million people going about their daily lives. The next moment, every living thing on the planet was gone. Admiral Blake stared at the reports coming in from the investigation team. Ships, buildings, and technology remained untouched. But every person, every animal, every plant had simply vanished. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no indication of what had happened. "It's exactly like the old records," Morrison said grimly. "The Devourers don't destroy things. They consume life itself." Blake felt sick. 8 million people. "Gone," Morrison confirmed. "And this is just the beginning. They'll hit more colonies, testing Federation response times and military capabilities. Then they'll move on to the core worlds." The enhanced soldiers had taken over a section of Luna Station for their operations. Blake found their methods disturbing. They worked in perfect coordination, speaking in short phrases that somehow conveyed complex tactical information. When they looked at battle reports, they saw patterns that escaped even his best strategists. Sergeant Amy Phillips spread out star charts on the main table. Based on the attack pattern, they'll hit Kepler Prime next, then the mining colonies. In the Ross system, after that, they'll have enough information about our defenses to begin the real assault. Lieutenant Rick Hayes nodded. Earth will be the primary target, but they'll attack Mars and Europa simultaneously to divide our forces. Morrison studied the charts. We need to stop them before they reach the core systems. If they take Earth, the war is over. Admiral Blake. joined the discussion. What do you need from Federation forces? Morrison looked at him with those cold, calculating eyes. Nothing, Admiral. Federation forces can't fight this enemy effectively. Your ships and weapons are designed for warfare against physical opponents. The Devourers exist partially outside normal space. Most of your attacks will pass right through them. Then what's the plan? Morrison activated a holographic display, showing the star systems between the outer colonies and Earth. We take the fight to them. 13 enhanced soldiers against an invasion force that destroyed civilizations before humans ever left their home planet. Blake stared at the display. 13 people against that? We're not people anymore, Admiral, Amy Phillips said quietly. We're weapons. And weapons don't need good odds. They just need clear targets. The enhanced soldiers departed Luna Station. In a single ship, a modified Federation cruiser that had been equipped with weapons from the old archives. The technology was 300 years old, but far more advanced than anything the modern military used. Blake watched them leave with a melee, mixture of relief and terror. Relief that humanity had defenders capable of fighting this threat. Terror at what those defenders had become in order to fight it. The first battle took place in the Vega system. The enhanced soldiers arrived to find the Devourers in the process of consuming a mining colony. Through their ship's modified sensors, they could see the enemy clearly for the first time. The Devourers looked like living shadows with too many angles, creatures that hurt to look at directly. They moved through space without ships existing, in dimensions that human minds struggled to comprehend. As they fed on the life force of the colony, they became more solid, more real. Target the feeding clusters, Morrison ordered. Don't let them finish draining the colony. The battle was unlike anything in Federation military doctrine. The enhanced soldiers fought in 3 dimensions simultaneously, targeting enemies that phased in and out of normal space. Their weapons fired energy patterns that could harm creatures existing in multiple dimensions at once. Morrison led the assault personally, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to track targets that moved faster than normal human perception could follow. Amy Phillips used explosives that detonated across dimensional barriers, while Rick Hayes picked off individual Devourers with precision shots that followed their movements through. Folded space. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Devourers had been driven back, but the mining colony was already half drained. 3,000 people had been saved, but 5,000 were gone forever. This is what victory looks like against this enemy, Morrison told Admiral Blake over the communication link. We saved some, but not all. And each battle costs us resources we can't replace. Blake felt the weight of command pressing down on him. How many more colonies can you save? Not many, Morrison admitted. We're fighting a delaying action, Admiral. We can slow them down, make them pay for every world they take, but we can't stop them with just 13 soldiers. Back on Earth, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was making a discovery that would change everything. Deep in the archived files, she found references to something called the Primary Gateway. According to the records, the Devourers didn't just appear randomly. They came through a main dimensional portal that connected their reality to normal space. She called Admiral Blake immediately. Admiral, I found something. The Devourers have a central gateway that all their forces use to enter our dimension. If we could find it and destroy it, we could cut off their invasion entirely. Blake felt a spark of hope. Where is it? That's the problem. The gateway isn't in normal space. It exists in a region where the barriers between dimensions are naturally weak. The enhanced soldiers would have to enter that region and fight the Devourers on their home ground. Blake transmitted this information to Morrison's ship. The response came back quickly. We'll do it, Morrison said simply. Send us the coordinates. But Elena had more disturbing news. Admiral, there's something else in these files. Something about what the Devourers really are. Blake felt a chill. What do you mean? According to the oldest records, the Devourers weren't always monsters. They were originally human. A colony ship that disappeared into a dimensional rift 400 years ago. The exposure to extra-dimensional energy transformed them into what they are now. The implications hit Blake like a physical blow. The enemy that threatened all human civilization was actually a twisted version of humanity itself. The enhanced soldiers had reached the location of the primary gateway. What they found there defied human understanding. Space itself was broken in this region, with fragments of different realities overlapping and intersecting. The gateway appeared as a massive wound in the fabric of space, bleeding darkness into normal reality. Morrison gathered his team for what they all knew would be their final mission. Everyone understands what we're doing here? Amy Phillips checked her explosives one last time. We go in, we plant the charges, we collapse the gateway. From the inside, Rick Hayes nodded grimly. And we probably don't come back. Morrison looked at each of his soldiers. These people had given up their humanity to protect humanity. They had become monsters so that others could remain human. And now they were about to make the ultimate sacrifice. Any regrets? He asked Lisa. Stone, who had been quiet throughout the mission, spoke up. I regret that it took 300 years for people to remember why they needed us. Morrison smiled, and for a moment he looked almost human again. Then let's go remind them. The enhanced soldiers entered the dimensional rift in their ship, diving into a reality where the laws of physics bent and twisted around them. The Devourers were waiting for them, thousands of the creatures guarding their gateway home. The final battle began in a space where up and down had no meaning, where time flowed backward and forward simultaneously, where the screams of consumed. Civilizations echoed across dimensions. Morrison fought his way toward the gateway's core, his enhanced body adapting to the impossible physics of the extra-dimensional space. Around him, his soldiers held off waves of Devourers, buying him time. To reach the critical systems as he approached the gateway's heart, Morrison made a discovery that changed everything. The control system wasn't just a machine. It was alive, a fusion of technology and transformed human consciousness that had been guiding the Devourer invasion. And at its center, preserved in extra-dimensional energy, was the brain of Captain Sarah. Mitchell, commander of the original colony ship that had disappeared 4 centuries ago. Please, her voice whispered across dimensions. End this? End what we became? Morrison understood. The Devourers weren't just mindless predators. They were the transformed colonists, driven mad by their existence between dimensions, unable to stop themselves from consuming the life force they desperately craved. He placed his hand on the gateway's core and felt the connection form. To destroy the gateway, he would have to merge with it, becoming part of the dimensional barrier that kept the Devourers trapped in their twisted reality. Morrison to Admiral Blake, he transmitted his final message. Mission accomplished. Gateway will be sealed permanently. Tell humanity that we kept our promise. The gateway collapsed in a cascade of dimensional energy that rippled across space and time. The Devourer's invasion was cut off, their forces trapped in a reality they could never escape. But the cost was everything. Morrison and his enhanced soldiers were gone, sacrificed to save a galaxy that would never fully understand what they had given up. On Earth, Admiral Blake stood at the window of his office, looking up at stars that were safe because 13 people had chosen to become something more and less than human. 6 months after the gateway collapsed, humanity was still learning how to live with what they had discovered about themselves. Admiral Blake stood in the memorial hall on Luna Station, looking at the 13 empty chairs that represented the enhanced soldiers who had saved the galaxy. Each chair bore a name and a simple inscription. They became monsters so we could remain human. The aftermath of the war had been complicated in ways that no one had expected. The enhanced soldiers' sacrifice had saved billions of lives, but their existence had changed how humanity saw itself. People began asking uncomfortable questions about what their species was capable of when survival was at stake. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had become the keeper of the truth. Her complete historical records of the silent war and Project Lazarus were now required reading for all Federation military officers. The government had decided that humanity would never again forget what it had asked some of its people to become. The enhanced soldiers weren't just weapons, Elena explained to a group of Federation historians. They were volunteers who gave up their humanity to protect ours. They knew the cost when they agreed to the modifications, and they paid it willingly. But the impact of the war went far beyond historical records. In the weeks following the enhanced soldiers' sacrifice, strange things began happening to normal humans throughout. Federation Space Captain Lisa Warren was the first to notice the changes in her crew. The people who had served aboard the UES Horizon during Morrison's transport to Luna Station were different now. They moved faster, thought more clearly, and showed tactical awareness that they had never possessed before. Dr. Sarah Kim studied the phenomenon and made a disturbing discovery. Prolonged exposure to Morrison seems to have activated dormant genetic sequences in normal humans. It's as if being near him awakened something that was already inside us. The effect spread slowly but steadily. Humans who had been in contact with the enhanced soldiers or who had served in areas where the soldiers had operated began displaying enhanced reflexes, improved strength, and heightened awareness. Nothing as dramatic as the original enhanced soldiers, but significant enough to be noticed. Admiral Blake found himself among those affected. He could now see patterns in battle reports that had escaped him before. His reaction time had improved by 30%. When he looked in the mirror, his eyes seemed sharper, more alert. It's like they left something behind, he told Dr. Rodriguez during one of their regular meetings. Something that's changing us whether we want it to or not. Elena nodded grimly. According to the Project Lazarus files, this was always a possibility. The enhanced soldiers weren't just modified humans. They were the first step in humanity's evolution towards something more capable of survival in a hostile galaxy. The Galactic Federation's response to these developments was mixed. Some species viewed the changes in humanity with suspicion and fear. Others saw them as a natural adaptation to the reality of extradimensional threats. Ambassador Thexanol of the Vrex Collective was among the most concerned. "We have worked for centuries to maintain peace between species," he told the Federation Council. "If humans continue to develop these enhanced capabilities, it could destabilize the entire balance of power in the galaxy." But Dr. Kethfar, who had observed Morrison from the beginning, offered a different perspective. The enhanced humans sacrificed themselves to save all of us. Perhaps their legacy is humanity's way of ensuring that such sacrifices won't be necessary in the future. On Earth, the discovery of the other suspended animation facilities had revealed something unexpected. There were more enhanced soldiers than anyone had realized. The original Project Lazarus had created not 50 enhanced humans, but over 200. Most had been killed in the silent war, but dozens remained in hidden facilities scattered throughout. Human space. The debate over whether to wake them became one of the most contentious issues in human politics. Some argued that the remaining enhanced soldiers should be revived and integrated into society. Others insisted that they should remain sleeping, awakened only if humanity faced another existential threat. Captain Tony Miller, who had helped Elena discover the Antarctic archive, led the faction that wanted the enhanced soldiers to remain in suspended animation. They said it themselves. They're too dangerous for peacetime. We've seen what they're capable of. Do we really want people like that walking among us? But Elena disagreed. They're not just weapons. They're people who made a sacrifice that we can barely comprehend. Don't we owe them a chance to live normal lives if they want to? The decision was ultimately made by humanity's civilian government, with input from Federation leadership. The remaining enhanced soldiers would be revived, but slowly and carefully. Each one would be given the choice of remaining active or returning to suspended animation until they were needed again. The first group of 12 enhanced soldiers was awakened on a Tuesday morning in September. Unlike Morrison and his team, these soldiers woke to a world that knew what they were and why they existed. The public reception was mixed, with some people viewing them as heroes and others seeing them as potential threats. Sergeant Beth Carter was among the newly awakened. She had been a communications specialist during the Silent War, capable of maintaining contact with enhanced soldiers across dimensional barriers. When she woke up, she found a world that was both familiar and alien. "Everything is so peaceful," she told the debriefing team. "When we went to sleep, humanity was at war for its survival. Now you're part of a galactic federation, living in harmony with alien species. It's like waking up in a dream." But Beth and the others quickly realized that their presence was changing things. Wherever they went, normal humans began displaying enhanced capabilities. The effect was stronger with the newly awakened soldiers, as if their longer time in suspension had concentrated whatever force caused the changes. Dr. Kim's research revealed the mechanism behind the phenomenon. The enhanced soldiers emit a form of bioelectric field that activates dormant neural pathways in normal humans. It's not permanent, but prolonged exposure can create lasting changes. Within a year of the Gateway's destruction, humanity had been fundamentally altered. Not all humans showed enhanced capabilities, but enough did that it became a recognized aspect of human biology. Children born after the war began displaying natural abilities that previous generations had to achieve through genetic modification. Other species in the Federation watched these developments with growing concern. Humanity was evolving, becoming something more than what they had been when they joined the galactic community. But humanity was also becoming more careful about how they used their new capabilities. The memory of what the enhanced soldiers had sacrificed served as a constant reminder that power without wisdom could lead to tragedy. Admiral Blake, now showing significant enhanced capabilities himself, established new protocols for human military forces. "We will never again create weapons like the enhanced soldiers," he declared. "But we will also never again be caught unprepared for threats that require extraordinary measures." The enhanced soldiers who chose to remain active integrated slowly into human society. Some became teachers, passing on tactical knowledge to military academies. Others became researchers, using their enhanced perception to advance human understanding of dimensional physics. A few simply tried to live normal lives, though their nature made that difficult. Morrison's sacrifice had saved the galaxy, but it had also set in motion changes that would reshape humanity's future. The enhanced soldiers had become the catalyst for their species' evolution into something stronger, more capable, and more aware of the responsibilities that came with power. 5 years after the war, Elena Rodriguez stood in the Memorial Hall, looking at a new addition to the display. It was a simple plaque with Morrison's final words, "We kept our promise." Below it was a new inscription, added by the families of the enhanced soldiers. They became more than human, so humanity could become better. The galaxy was safe, but it was also different. Humanity had learned that peace was not the absence of the capacity for war, but the wisdom to use that capacity only when absolutely necessary, in hidden facilities throughout human space. The remaining enhanced soldiers slept on, waiting for the next crisis that might require their unique abilities. But now humanity knew they were there, and more importantly, they understood the cost of creating such defenders. The war was over, But the legend of the enhanced soldiers lived on, a reminder that sometimes the greatest act of humanity was choosing to become something more than human for the sake of those who remained behind. And in the depths of space, the collapsed dimensional gateway stood as a monument to sacrifice, ensuring that the Devourers would never again threaten the galaxy that Morrison and his soldiers had died to protect.